So our next speaker is Fergal. Fergal was an orthopedic consultant at the Royal Hospital for Children in Bristol. He's also the director for the Avon Centre for Musculoskeletal Education, immediate past president for the Limb Reconstruction Society, and he sits on the editorial board of the Bone and Joint Journal and a special editor for pediatrics. And he's also a great mentor to trainees. So please, Fergal.
Thank you very much. So the working title is Diversity in Orthopaedics: Work-Life Balance. And I've taken a little slightly different spin on it than probably the other speakers, because I'm a grammar pedant, and a colon introduces an element that illustrates the preceding information. And so what I'm going to talk to you about is both, both diversity in orthopedics and work-life balance. But I don't feel very qualified to speak to you about either. So the title, again, we were told or asked or invited to give a title some time ago. And I think as with Deepa, I just threw this title out. But actually, I think it's probably the title I want to speak to. The hiding in plain sight refers to someone who's from a very modest background with very modest intellectual and technical skills, who still has been able to negotiate through this system. And my disclosures, really, I'm just the privileged old white bloke. And it's always very difficult following Deborah. It takes Deborah a week to get through the first page of her CV, but this is who I am. And the reason I put it there is because in talking to you about work-life balance, I've got to remember that the path that I followed is now very, very overgrown. I'm 2 generations ahead of most of the people who are in this audience, assuming that it's medical students. And so the things that I think, the way I view the world is completely different. And so the advice I would give you is arcane, irrelevant, and plain stupid. So I'm going to stay away from that a bit. The Go-Between is a great book. The first line, the past is a foreign country. They do things differently there. And if I think about the world that was in existence when I qualified and the one that is in existence when you qualify, the societal pressures are completely different. They are unrecognizable. The public expectation is equally unrecognizable. The therapeutic options as a clinician have changed substantially. And the working practices, I think, have improved. The most important difference between the way that most of this audience think and the way that I think is because of the internet. When I was in medical school, the internet hadn't been thought of, well, it had been thought of, but it hadn't been introduced. And so the whole idea of instant access to information was a fantasy. The way that you communicate is completely different to the way I communicate. It's not better or worse. Well, in fact, it's probably considerably better, but it's one that you understand in a blink and one that takes me some time to get hold of. And so I'm a different person to you. I hope I'm not better or worse, but just different. Whoever I am and however I differ from you, the one crime that I must not commit is of complacency, particularly from where I sit on a professional basis. And it would be a crime to think that things are equitable, or that we're all fair and open-minded, and that everything's going in the right direction. And it's not as bad as all that, is it? Because if we do that, we will make no progress. And I think, building on some of the points that Deborah and Deepa have made, I think we are at a time of progress, but we must not be complacent about it. If we look at the diversity issue in terms of gender bias, you know these slides, they're thrown around all over the place. But if you just look at percentage male to female applicants over the 2003 to 2008, broadly speaking, slightly more female than male acceptances into medical school. And so something happens between medical school day one and choosing a specialist career. You've seen this slide before. 7% of trauma and orthopedic surgeons are female. So something has happened to the 60-40 to make it 93-7. If you look at the BOE Council today, this is the governing body of the British Orthopaedic Association, 95% are over 50 and 89% are male. And so, not surprisingly, the stereotype is of an elderly white male. But I put it to you that people are working very hard to try and change this, not just the stereotype, but the actual process that governs orthopaedics in this country. Now, the BOA has got a very sophisticated action plan to try and address this very point. And if you just look at point 2, is to strengthen diversity within leadership. Now, if you look at the overall membership at each grade, and this takes some of the time differences out. If you look at consultants, which is 20 plus years ago, it's 7%. If you look at post-CCT, it's about 15%. If you look at trainees, about 22% are female. But that's nowhere near even a generous 50-50 split. It's probably more 60-40 female-male. But we are improving. Now, I do not want to be complacent, but I do want to illustrate that there is some progress been made on this very point. If you look at the BOA Council, as of now, as of 2022, 26% of the council will be female, based on the most recent elections. The other thing that we're trying very hard to do is to increase awareness of orthopaedics as a career, and webinars like this are an absolute privilege to be able to take part in. But that is the front page of the prospectus from Bristol Medical School. And what I wonder is what happens to the people who walk into medical school who are 60-40 or 50-50 or thereabouts, female, male, and the people who choose orthopaedics as a career. So something is putting you off. And I question, is it the likes of me? Is it either the reality or the stereotype that is doing damage to people's career aspirations and choices? And if you look up on Tinternet, essential leadership qualities, you'll get the following sort of list. You need integrity, you need learning agility, you need communication skills. I think they're base requirements for anyone who's doing a professional job, irrespective of where, how, and with what. But other skills which we haven't in the past taken care of or valued sufficiently are self-awareness. And so if I look at myself and the students who I am asked to encourage, I've got to remember that my worldview may not be the same as theirs. They're different. I stress different, not better, not worse. Cultural references are different. Motivators are different. Sense of humor is different, and sense of justice is different. The last two, I think, are things I really need to take care of, because one of the things I notice that puts people off in a hurry is when we are inappropriate, because things we think are amusing or appropriate just aren't anymore. And I think about the way I looked at my parents' generation, and I was appalled at some of the things that were said, some very casual remarks which were just unacceptable then, and the world has improved, and we have to be very careful that we don't miss that. Other essential leadership qualities are of respect and of empathy. And again, I need to be absolutely aware that the background, the obstacles, and the opportunities facing people of 18 to 24 years old currently are different to those that I had to negotiate, that the pressures are different, and that the aspirations are different. But I think what unites us all is we all go into it for the same reason. We all want to treat and make patients better. And it's just the circumstances in which we have to apply ourselves to have changed. I like this slide. Edmund Burke was a philosopher in the 1700s, and he said, nobody make a greater mistake than he who did nothing because he could only do a little. Well, I have to correct him there, because it's gender neutral. Anyone who does nothing because they can only do a little is missing a trick. And what I mean by that is all I can do is use the influence that I have to make frequent small changes to the environment around me. So how can I become a better leader? We have to, I hope we agree that these are a requirement. But the self-awareness side of things is something that we have to be very, very careful about. And we have to be very thoughtful about who we think we are, how we are perceived, and how we behave. Respect should be part and parcel of a professional's vocabulary, but sometimes it isn't, and sometimes we're deficient. And empathy on the same basis. We have to improve as people. The old-fashioned idea of a stern, stone-faced automaton who did orthopedic surgery has got to go. I think it's almost extinct, but not yet quite extinct. And how can I change the culture of orthopedics? And this is really the only slide that I want you to take care of, to be aware of. What I think I can do is I can make it inclusive and collaborative and friendly and fun. And the reason I tell you, people who are at the early stages of their careers, is I want you to do that all the way through yours to the people who follow you, because they are very likely to ask you the same questions that you are asking of me. Work-life balance, again, it's not something I feel very qualified to talk about. But what I think about it is you've got to work out what you want and what you need. And as Deborah said, you can have everything, but you may not be able to have it all at once. If you find something you love to do, you'll never have to work a day in your life. Well, that's attributed to Confucius. Well, when I was preparing for this, of course, I looked it up, and it's nonsense. It's a bloke called Arthur, I'm going to struggle with that, Seth Mary, who was in Princeton in the 1980s. I can't tell you about a work-life balance. All I will tell you is what I've learned to recognize when you're out of balance. And my toolkit for me, and one which I would recommend you think about, are two things. The 4 a.m. test. If you are awake at 4 a.m. in the morning, worrying about things at work, you are standing too close and you need to get out and have a holiday. The trick is having holidays spaced sufficiently frequently, or time off work, or doing something differently, or doing something that isn't orthopedics sufficiently frequently so you do not wake up at 4 a.m. in the morning. And the other is the domestic promise test. If you have broken a domestic promise, irrespective of your domestic circumstances, you are out of work-life balance. And you've got to think about how that happened, and you've got to be very honest with yourself about how that is not going to happen again. And that is across the spectrum. It doesn't matter what your domestic circumstances are. If you break a promise because work took priority, you're out of balance. So what have I really learned over the last 35 years? And what advice has this man got for this boy? It took me an awful long time to recognize that it's not about me. And that was the most fundamentally changing thing that happened to me. But for you, what advice can I give you? Nothing simpler than be on time, be nice, be honest, be optimistic, and then just let it play. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Fergal. I think I'm doing well on your 4 a.m. test. I have to run late for the train. Great. Thank you so much. Full of advice that are practical and definitely very wise.